Good evening. I'm John Stone, and welcome to Georgia 12 Tonight as we discuss this week's, the wrap-up rather, of this week's activities here in the Georgia's 12th Congressional District. I'm John Stone, running for Congress in the 12th District. We had a great week all around the state this week in Vidalia, Swainsboro, Augusta, as we traveled and talked to folks and got their feedback on what's important here in our district, what's important around the state and around the country. A great week. We hope you've enjoyed these brief broadcasts each night. It's a great opportunity for us to keep up to date with each other on what's important and for me to hear from you and not just you hearing from me as a candidate. So we want to continue these next week. I hope everybody's got a great weekend lined up. And without further ado, I'll take our comments that came in today that you asked for some feedback on. First, from one of our fellow patriots down in Baxley. Says, I am hearing that Congress is about to exempt themselves from Obamacare and leave us in it. Is that true, and what do you say about that? Well, I say that stinks. And let me give a little background on this issue because a lot of people have inquired specifically about this. Is Congress covered under Obamacare? Well, thanks to the Republican minority in the House when Obamacare was being debated and discussed, the Republican minority kept insisting over and over that the House members of the House and Senate and their staffs had to be included in whatever the Obamacare federal offering, federal plan was, and removed from their current plan, which is the Federal Employees Health Benefit Plan. Well, the Democrats turned it down once, they turned it down twice, and suddenly, for once in a blue moon, Republicans were actually gaining some traction in the media, and even the Democratic-leaning media saw the fairness of it, that if we pass any type of national health care plan, members of Congress and their staff needed to be included in that federal plan. The Democrats finally agreed, and as part of Obamacare, it is required that members of Congress and their staff have to be taken out of the Federal Employees Health Benefit Plan in January and put into the federal offering under Obamacare. That is until this week. And this week, the Obama administration's Office of Personnel Management has come back, and they think they found somewhere in the terms and the clauses of Obamacare that even though the law says that Congress and their staff has to be included, that they actually should be given a waiver. Well, I think that's absolutely wrong, and I'll tell you, so does Louisiana Senator David Vitter. He's trying to round up support in Congress to force Congress and their staff to remain in Obamacare if there's going to be an Obamacare at all. I agree with that, and I would support Senator Vitter if I were there, and if I'm there in January 2015, after this election, that's exactly what I'll push for. First, we need to repeal Obamacare in its entirety and replace it with a good national health care reform law. We can't just complain about Obamacare. We have to have something better, and I think we can, and I'm willing to talk about that in detail on this campaign, and we will. But if we're going to have it, members of Congress and their staff need to be included in it. Right now, the Obama administration has already given waivers to practically every labor union in the country that you don't have to comply. They've given waivers to employers that you don't have to comply. And now they're giving waivers to the federal government and members of Congress. Well, who's left? Just the hard-working people of this country. Well, that's most of us. That's the majority of the nation. We need to stand up. Either the law is the same for everybody, or else the law needs to go away, and that's where I stand. I would support Senator Vitter's effort. And thank you, our friend in Baxley, for that question. Next, this question from Ken. Do you think the House will pass any kind of immigration reform bill, and if so, does that open the door to ram through the Senate amnesty bill? I don't think the House is going to pass any type of immigration reform bill, but yes, there does have the threat of leaving an opening to ram through the Senate bill. I'll explain how that's working. Right now, the majority of the House members will not pass the Senate immigration bill because it provides outright amnesty without guaranteeing that any of the border security or immigration enforcement mechanisms are in place and working first. Now, people will debate that, but that's the facts. If we pass a really good bill in the House, one that I would agree with, one that you all would probably agree with, there's a threat that when that bill goes to conference for a compromise committee to be worked out with that in the Senate bill, that we could get the Senate bill brought back from that conference committee to the House, and it could pass with 200 Democrats and 25 Republicans voting for it. And that's something that I don't think we can take the risk of. So yet there is a chance it's one that we certainly have to guard against. But we do need an immigration reform bill because we have between 750,000 and 1 million illegal immigrants pouring across the border successfully every year. That's got to stop. We need to do something to stop it. We need to pass an E-Verify bill and clean up and secure our workplace here in the United States to where the job magnet is turned off, and a lot of that problem will go away. To get that, we're going to have to come up with some kind of a good bill that will pass and won't have the kind of subterfuge behind it of the current mechanisms and negotiations between the Senate gang of 8 bill and anything the House may do. I think our best bet's going to be to handle that in 2015. That's why I'm asking for your vote in this election and also asking for your help with our campaign. If you're watching this broadcast tonight and would like to support what we're doing, support the ideas that we have, I ask you to go to our donations page and support us as generously as you can. As you know, we're up against a primary opponent who's got unlimited funds. We'll be up against John Barrow in the general election, who will have millions from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and we need your support to make it happen. Unfortunately, politics is a lot about money because we have to buy advertising, and I need your support. Please go to that donations page and help us. Finally, I'll take one more question tonight, and this is from Mary in Augusta, and she says, I hear you talking about new interstates for Augusta and the CSRA. I remember that was talked about several years ago, but seems to have died out. How can you bring those back? Mary, that's an excellent question, and it's one that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock I'll be talking to the Richmond County Republican Breakfast here in Augusta, and I'll be focusing on those new interstates and what we can do to bring them back. For those of you who don't know, back in 2004, Congressman Max Burns, who preceded John Barrow in this seat, a conservative Republican, brought forth 2 great bills. One was to create a new north-south interstate between Augusta, Savannah, and North Georgia, and the other was to create an east-west interstate across the entire South, from Augusta, Macon, Columbus, Montgomery, Natchez, Mississippi, out the other side to College Station, Texas, where it's home of Texas A&M, and to actually provide the first ever east-west interstate access for Austin, the state capital of Texas, which curiously has no east-west interstate. We have a problem, a transportation equity problem here in Georgia. We've had since we've had the interstate system going on. Excuse me one moment. As I have mentioned before, this is not a staged broadcast. This isn't a professional broadcast. It's one that I do from my office every evening. There's no teleprompter, there's no script, there's nobody editing things, and I'm not being fed anything. That was the cat trying to get into the broadcast here. And Nicholas is not so good, so I thought I'd leave him out. Pardon me while I get him out of the way. But back to our interstates. Across the South, we have no interstate access between all of our second cities in Georgia. There was no interstate between Augusta and Savannah, none between Augusta, Macon, none between Macon and Columbus. And it's a problem we have in this area of the South all the way from here out to Texas. When these bills were introduced, they had tremendous bipartisan support across the South from multiple members of Congress. They sailed through and were passed into law in 2005 as part of the overall federal transportation bill that year, known as Safety Lou. And since then, since John Barrow's been in office, they've been allowed to die, absolute die. Last year we had the Interstate 14, that's the proposal from Augusta, Macon, Columbus, and across to Texas. That feasibility study was approved by the U.S. Department of Transportation, and it's been allowed to die. What we've got to have is a member of Congress from this district who's willing to stand up and get those back on the table. It has to come from existing funds. I'm not about to suggest that we increase federal spending or increase the federal debt to do it. The transportation dollars are there for other places in the country. And this is one thing I'll talk about in depth tomorrow, and I'll be happy to talk about across the district. We've got the worst unemployment of any congressional district in Georgia. And here are 2 projects that would turn the entire economy of East Georgia around, not just Augusta, but this is Sylvania, Savannah, giving us equal access to the harbor in Savannah that I-26 provides for. And here's the dog trying to get on the broadcast too. Ellie, down. Equal access to what Charleston has with I-26, giving direct north-south access out of the port of Charleston. We're going to talk about this tomorrow morning. Right now, I'm going to do something to these animals. I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to one, too, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday night at 9 o'clock on Georgia 12 Tonight. Join us. I'll try to have the animals tied up before we do. Good night. God bless Georgia. God bless America.